Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to episode 11 of Brand Studio Live. I'm Rameet Arora and I have a brand new set of brand masters with me today. Hosted jointly by HT Brand Studio and DMA Asia, Brand Studio Live brings together the country's best marketeers to talk about the hottest topics in marketing. Episode 11 is a continuation of the Mumbai chapter of Brand Studio Live Season 1, where we've moved out of the HT newsroom to the almost the haloed grounds of BSC, formerly known as the Bombay Stock Exchange. Where we are sitting today is the old trading hall. This is where lots of brands and companies actually built and created their fortunes and their futures.
Rich history.
Very rich history. Without further delay, let's start with today's episode. Content is king. It's cliched, it's a phrase we've heard a million times, but it holds truer today than ever before, at least in the history of marketing. According to Gartner, the term content marketing will actually be defunct by 2021, surprise, surprise, because all marketing content will automatically sort of rise to the expectations of an attention-limited audience. The challenge is, how do new age marketers create content that people care about, and that's why we've got all of you together today. My first guest is Manav Sethi, Group Chief Marketing Officer of Eros International PLC. As Group CMO, Manav looks after Eros now and the studio business. In his earlier role, he was the founder CMO for ALTBalaji, India's first SVOD OTT platform, which broke the notion that Indians don't pay for content. Talk to us a little bit about your conversations with brands, your experience, and how brands who still want to do storytelling and still want to be part of great storytelling are actually telling their stories in ways which are a little different from what we've seen.
What's your story? The story is what matters, and story is what leaves the impression behind, and brand rides on that story. You made a very pertinent point from a OTT standpoint, right? If you look at how the consumption shift is happening, and it is a structural shift, it's not a seasonal shift, right? I have a 8.5-year-old girl at home, and she pretty much grew up watching Netflix and Peppa Pig. Now imagine, as a marketer, as a brand leader, how do you go back to her and say, oh, you know what, while you're watching your show, pause for a moment, I'm going to show you a 30-second commercial, right? I think that entire specter has changed. I'm not even saying is changing. And that brings us to, point number 2, that if you look at how this pattern is, gonna move, and that's when for a brand, it becomes a very, very key KPI to be part of that entire narrative. I do remember when, I launched Alt, and, even at Eros, when we launched a show where the opening scene is this lead protagonist carrying a sanitary napkin bag, and she goes to a chemist shop to buy condoms, right? 2 of the leading FMCG players in the country called us to ask how much have we charged for that. And let me tell you, in all honesty, we had not charged a dime because that was part of the show, right? So that, if you look back now in that specter, you realize that that opens up the monetization ability and options from a platform standpoint, from a storyteller standpoint that never, existed before. And it also brings to fore the pain points that a brand as big as those 2 who called us are going through, right? If you look at what has happened in terms of AIB, if you look at, all of these new age content-led platforms, which has come. I mean, we have had a case of Kylie Jenner, right? Building a billion-dollar company rising only on Instagram feeds, right? So today, you need to look back and decide that as a brand, what is your narrative? What is your storytelling? And I think that is something very, very important.
Reactions or questions? Yeah.
People don't hate ads. They just hate ads that get into the way of the user experience, right?
Correct.
So they just don't want those blocking ads that stop you from getting news, or the ads that slow down your web pages. Are you still saying there's scope for these traditional sort of view that ads can be part of the storytelling, not just product placements, or are you pretty far down the, okay, product placements is it?
So, with foreseeable future, I believe that they will coexist. That is one. If you look at news as a genre, you realize that news is no more news. It has also become entertainment, right? So from that perspective, if you see, there's a lot of option that has come out, and which is why you see a lot of intrusive, commercials or sort of ads and products which have made their way into news, right? Which should not be the case, really. We have had, I mean, if you look at numbers, NYT is now showing up a scalable subscription-based business model. If you look at their last year earnings, they've made billion plus in revenues, riding only on the subscription.
Thank you so much, man.
Thank you, Rameet.
It was wonderful. Thanks a lot.
Happy being here.
My next guest is Divya Dixit, Senior Vice President and Head of Marketing at ALTBalaji. Divya brings 19 years of experience in marketing and brand building across industries, digital, broadcast, telecom, and music. She has an impeccable record in launching brands, reviving brands, and creating revenue opportunities. Welcome, Divya.
Thank you.
Divya, quickly, OTT is no more a premium play. It's no more a play for a few. It's become mass, and
Yes.
has content evolved, and is content sort of as massified as its base? Do you see that change happening? And what does it mean for you as a marketer and for us as marketers looking at ALTBalaji? What's happening to that space, because it's just exploded all of a sudden?
So let me start by saying this, that I personally as a marketer believe that it's not about OTT, it's not about broadcast. Content is screen agnostic, right? And like Manav earlier to me said, it's all about brilliant storytelling, right? Content that has great storytelling will ultimately fly on its own, right? That's one aspect. The other aspect remains that I think OTT has bought the culture per se and has played on the consumer psyche of saying, I'm now going to do things at my own convenience. I don't want to be told by the broadcaster, you come and watch me at this point of time. I'm going to today make you watch one episode at 9 p.m. Tomorrow come back again, watch 9 p.m. Don't tell me what to do. And there is a new age Indian out there, and I have a 15-year-old daughter at home. We are a 3 TV household. I consider my daughter to be native because she's been born and brought up in an era of tablets, mobiles, internet, 4G. She doesn't even open up her television in her room. I mean, she doesn't even switch it on. And when I've asked her multiple times, why don't you? She said, but Mom, neither do I, nor do my friends. We don't believe in television content anymore. It tells me what to do, when to do. I want to watch what I want to watch at my time. Now these are the people, this is the generation which is going to become paid subscriptions for us, right? Another 5 years down the line, right? And that is why probably OTT is exploding. I'm also a small town girl. When I go back to a small town called Muzaffarnagar, I actually see these aunties in neighborhood sitting, in the group, chatting, seeing on their mobile their favorite shows, gossiping, talking about it, discussing it. It's become a conversation starter, a topic of conversation in their otherwise mundane life. And now they don't have to sit in front of television at 9 p.m. and then alone watch it and have a disinterested husband who doesn't want to really discuss it. It's in the afternoon sitting along as a group discussing it. So I think that's what OTT is really doing. At Alt, we truly believe in massification. So if you look at the pricing also, and we are very, very sharply priced in terms of 100 rupees for a quarterly pack and 300 rupees for the annual, we're trying to give audience the experience of OTT, the empowerment of watching content at your space, at your time, 2 episodes, 3 episodes, binge watch, whatever that you want to do. And I think that's hitting the chord with the masses. And of course, the fact that we start our premise with brilliant storytelling. I also think, and that's my last point on this, that OTT brings about the flexibility of personalization of content, which unfortunately is not possible probably in broadcast, and therefore you have multiple channels, and today India sees some 900 plus channels. On OTT, I have the advantage of targeting you, targeting me, targeting the elite people here, or targeting the mass country out there with various cohorts, various consumer segments that we work with, and ensure our different sets of content are reaching the targeted audience and therefore serving that particular need. And that's how we believe that massification is bound to happen.
I do have a couple of questions, but I'm going to open it up
Sure.
so everybody can react or ask questions. Does anybody have a question or a reaction to that?
So Divya, it's interesting that you spoke about the massification of OTT. So from a content creator perspective, how are you guys looking at making it viable for you to actually be able to personalize and to make content which appeals to this really wide spectrum that's now opened up on this platform?
Okay, so I'll say this, we're a subscription service, right Jyoti? So you have to subscribe to see a certain product that you want to see. So that's my one stream for monetization. The other stream for monetization, like Manav said earlier to me, all of a sudden we're being approached by different brands who are asking us how can they be integrated either in the show or they can do multiple things surrounding the show. So that's another level of monetization. And then of course we're experimenting what to do with the available free episodes for the customer who's currently non-paying. So we're working on these three revenue opportunities always to monetize.
Are you creating for brands at all?
That's something we really want to do and we're currently exploring, and why not?
Sure. Thank you so much. It was
Thank you.
lovely having
Thank
you.
Lovely. Thank you.
I'm very excited about my next guest because I've learned a lot from him over the years. Agnello Dias is Chief Creative Officer and founder Taproot Dentsu. We all know him as Aggie. Agnello ranks among the most influential figures in the Indian advertising industry. In 2007, he made history at Cannes by winning India's first ever Grand Prix. He's also the only Indian advertising person to be listed among the world's 100 most creative people in business by the US-based Fast Company magazine. You've always said that the idea is the product, is the real product that creative people bring to the table, and what should connect everything that a brand does is the idea, not a photo or a visual or you know, a snippet of a 30-second commercial. Is this more true than ever? Are our creative directors now actually curators who take ideas and sort of find place for those ideas in our lives, not just a 30-second commercial, or are they still artists and you know, specialized in what they do? Has their role changed? Has their life changed?
It's changing, but we are being dragged, kicking and clawing every step of the way, and it comes from many years actually of the advertising industry kind of blurring the lines between art and craft. So just to take a theoretical step back, when there is a creative force or energy or idea within us, just like when we normally talk, we speak in English, Hindi, Tamil, whatever. Similarly, creative has languages: literature, music, sculpture, painting, music. All of these are languages for creative to be expressed. But they are crafts in which creative is best expressed. So an idea that's best written in words may not always be best expressed through a sculpture. Just like a turn of phrase may best be expressed in Punjabi, but may be translated in English and you can understand it, but you don't identify with it as much as it would have in its native language. So most of the creative people joining the industry would be asked to have a craft as a backup. Can you write? Can you draw? Because in case you don't have a thought or you don't have ideas, you can at least help us craft out or write, and that was your backup kind of remuneration plan for the agency, because when money comes into the agency, it's coming for ideas and then the execution of ideas. Traditionally for 80 years or 90 years, all the execution was in print. So it became natural for generation after generation to have writers, because there was no other way of of pushing out your message to the world except through a newspaper or through a hoarding. Then came TV and they said, okay, can you have film writers? Because now there's a third way of expressing this. But now in the last 25 years, because there's 25 other ways of expressing it, and even the so-called big word called digital is many 14 or 15 different ways. Now it becomes very difficult to create a human resource plan in an agency because the old system of using craft to judge, evaluate and probably even reward people is breaking down.
But I'm going to ask you this directly because as marketers sitting here, is the marketing brief changing?
The format of a marketing brief is still, you know, a long paragraph. At least 60% of it describes this woman or this man whom you are talking to, because I guess it's easier to describe that person. You can get it off the internet. But the actual brief that is to be said, which is the insight or what you're trying to approach, and I don't even know many people who know the true definition of an insight. An insight is, they know it should be one single line, so whatever fits in one line becomes the insight. You know, for example, mothers love their children could be an insight on a brief, but they have to change that format as well, and I think briefs will soon have to be evolved as a process rather than be handed down as a verdict.
And is it, and Jyoti is here, so let me ask you that question. Is it also now time for the creative director and the media planner to start working together far more aggressively?
I have a favorite saying. I always say, the last time I entered the media department, I came out married.
We know that.
I mean, I've never really understood why unbundling started. Maybe because I was too young at that time and not in the sections of the agency that were making the decisions. So I don't know how it started or why it started. But till today, it's always a question to which people continue to give smart, witty answers than a really logical answer. So nobody really knows why it started.
There must be some reactions and some questions. Yes, I can see lots of hands.
No, I just want to ask this. So I quite agree with what Aggie spoke about, the fact that briefs are written like those long paragraphs, and you know, that one insight is missing, right? I think where the marketer is stuck, and I think that's where the creative partner has to step in, is basically at the root cause of the insight, root cause of the issue, and not wait actually for a brief to come in. So I, as a marketer, for example, when I meet my creative partner, I tell them, here's the issue I have. Can you tell me how to solve this? Because there's no point of me writing one page of brief, honestly, on something which I'm not able to understand what to do with. So do you believe in that kind of working together? Do you believe that's going to solve a lot of these sending out briefs that are garbage in and garbage out kind of a story?
I'm not sure it will work because, and this may be a touchy, sensitive issue to discuss on the show, but I think advertising agencies may have had to tighten the processes by which they approach a brief because of the tightening screws and remuneration. And I say this because I remember when I started out in advertising, there used to be strategic planners who actually went out for 2 months on the field and visited along with the product brand managers shops or stores or places where they used to do business and came back. Now an agency can't afford to pay him for 2 months because the money he's getting from that same client has gone down by that much. So now, because it's becoming a fast food processor game, it's like fast food. So the agency tends to hold back on that, and therefore they are not in a position to guess an issue or to start at a point at which the issue starts unless that issue comes from the client. But there used to be a time when the issues with the brand used to be sought out and maybe spotted by the agency earlier than the client, because there was probably a group of people who were actually following that category. Those group of people following that category are now rare in advertising and probably exist only for the large multinationals or those kind of brands because they have a business model that allows for it to be paid and existed. Most of the others, they are okay if you actually put this question on and say, are you okay that we work at this cost but we don't have all this for you, we just give you creative. There are a lot of marketers who will say yes today and are saying yes.
Thank you, Aggie. That was lovely as always. Yes. Thank you. I'd like to introduce my next guest, Jyoti Kumar Bansal, CEO, PhD India. Welcome, Jyoti.
Hi.
Jyoti has worked across various traditional and digital media organizations in a career spanning 23 years. Under her leadership, PhD India is today a $300 million plus agency. Jyoti, quickly getting to the crux of today's discussion, this is the attention economy. And if you win attention, you keep the market. So talk to us a little bit about that, about the immediacy of content, about being relevant, being contextual, being there.
While as marketeers, as advertisers, as media people, we've always, our core job has been to be able to grab the attention of the consumer. I think it's become even more difficult now because of the complexity in which we now operate. What is still important and still relevant is that we have to tell amazing stories. We have to tell them in a context and in a tone that sort of resonates with our consumers. And I think that is something that does not really change, whether we are creating audiovisual content, we are creating an advertising format, 30-second TVC, masthead, whatever, right? So from that is where I think our core, the understanding that we have of how we connect with this consumer is where we are all sort of learning and evolving. The only thing that I would like to put a little different perspective to on this is that in our sort of perspective right now, whenever we say content or we say share of attention, the first thing that we sort of tend to visualize in our mind is an audio visual, whether it is a TVC or whether it is a branded content that we produce or a product placement in a traditional or non-traditional, whatever way that we choose to do it. The way things are changing, I think it's very important for us to understand that everything that we use to connect or touch our consumer is content. You know, every asset is actually content, right? So whether the consumer is browsing, whether he is searching, whether she is engaging, any piece that touches him or her is content, and therefore we need to sort of free our mind a little bit from content as just being a piece of video or a product that we place into a show that the consumer is watching. And therefore it is very critical that we sort of tailor our thinking around how we are reaching out to the consumer in this journey that he or she is traversing. So if they are browsing, which is the most common thing that I think all of us do now with phones at our fingertips, are we telling engaging stories? Are we telling a story which makes him or her stop to see what the story is all about? When they start engaging, are we ready to give them the information which is needed for them to really want to try out our brand? If they are in an active search mode, are we giving them the information which will then make them brand loyal or make them want to connect more with our brand?
Wonderful. We will take one question. Aggie has a question.
So do you think that this new form of content sponsored by a brand is actually just a fashionable way of saying brand placement? Because while saving a baby, if I pick up a thumbs up bottle, it's a thumbs up ad, and while saving a baby, if I wear a watch, it's a Titan ad.
When we say branded content in our country, a lot of times we just sort of visualize in our mind an audio visual show or whatever format it is where we have placed our brand, or where we've, maybe if we are a little more evolved, we've tried to build it around maybe one of the brand values that we embody. I think it's a sort of like an intermediary. We will eventually get to where we will be far more evolved and sensible about how we do it.
All right. Thank you so much. That was wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you
nice
for coming.
To be.
My next guest is Rajshree Bakshi, Senior Vice President Marketing, Reliance Industries Limited. She's an experienced marketing professional with over 21 years of customer, brand and marketing insights. In 2017, she was recognized as one of the top 50 marketing leaders by CMO Asia. In her current role, Rajshree is responsible for launching and developing the Geo World Center. Talk to us a little bit about that and tell us how you hope data and context will actually lead to better content or better creative work.
So let me start by saying that, content is the buzzword, and I think that's the reason why we are all sitting here today. But it's an important nuance that all of us need to understand, that it is not only about a beautiful creative. I heard a lot of people say here today that, today it's loosely being interpreted as a great audiovisual or a great film. It can be short, it could be long. Actually, there is a huge amount of science which goes behind. And let me start by narrating the story which I think all of us can relate to, is when Netflix started. They started off by just being a storehouse of content which was created all over. And the reason why they actually started off with this model was because they were really trying to understand the consumer behavior. Over a period of time, one of their series, which is now not such a great name to take, but House of Cards, was actually created very, very scientifically. It had understood what the customers are looking for. It had everything possible which was created. The twists and turns that we saw in House of Cards was actually keeping the entire data and analytics which they had done behind the scene. Today, there is just too much of content which is happening to all of us. Am I being able to serve something to you which is absolutely of your interest? And we have campaigns where we have studied the patterns of what you would have maybe done in the past, consumed in the past, traveled in the past. You have airlines which do a damn good job of ensuring that I browse and I say a trip to Morocco, and the next thing that you have is a company which is serving you some information about a hotel in Morocco. And I think that's where the entire story of contextual content is.
Reactions, questions? We can take a couple of questions.
What are your thoughts on Google Vogon, which is all about contextual advertising? Do you believe in it, or do you just believe that it's just about massacring your creative and putting it out there? What do you think, really?
So I think, well, different models work. So I definitely think that's a model which works. Content is quite interesting. It has to rally around one North Star, right? That North Star could be a psychological motive. It could be a social motive. We have seen a lot of things which has happened. I think all of us remember that one jewelry brand as a woman where she was going into a second marriage, and she had the kid come and join her in the mandap. I think we all resonated, and we after a point even forgot which that brand was, but we resonated as women. So what I'm only trying to say is that as long as your content is following one North Star, whether it is a societal, psychological, emotive North Star, I think it's a great content out there.
Unless brands take control of marketing strategy, I don't know if we'll be able to create a strong connect with customers. And at some point of time, just saying that the customer is now in charge is maybe abdicating the responsibility for taking control in a new world. And that's just my view. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us on episode 11 of Brand Studio Live, co-hosted by HT Brand Studio and DMA Asia. A very special thanks to DMA Asia and Vatsal for powering this wonderful event. A big thank you to Fever FM, who evangelizes us, and to BSC for hosting us today. Thank you for tuning in. We look forward to another episode. Stay tuned.